All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Everything School HQ, Knoxville, Tennessee. The Tennessee Volunteers are back. They beat South Carolina by 40+ on Saturday night. The baseball team is 6-2. They sweep the Dayton Flyers, who are still winless. An absolute juggernaut of a series from the Vols as they get healthy. It's everything's back. Everything's cooking with grease. We're feeling pretty good. Even the Lady Vols are out here cooking. No, it's all good, man. Everything good here on Rocky Top. Down there in Decatur, Georgia, my good friend, fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back. Wasn't sure how long you were going to go with the weekly Tennessee, quote-unquote, everything school intro there. I can see it right now, man. I want to get you prepared for this mentally. I can see, the Sports Illustrated cover, it's not as iconic as it once was, I don't think any of us are really reading Sports Illustrated weekly like we once were. Unless, it's owned by the same company that does this podcast or something, then yeah, we're totally reading it every day.
I mean, I do read it every day, but I don't read everything. I'm reading 40, I'm reading Ross Dellinger, I'm reading Chris Herring.
Yeah, different people.
I'm reading
for
my
sure.
people, Richard Johnson.
It's not what it once was, right?
Absolutely
but
not, no.
The pinnacle of sports journalism. But I can see the cover of Sports Illustrated when Alabama wins the national championship in basketball. Everything school on the big bold letters. I can see it happening. And if once they label Alabama that, I don't know if Tennessee can ever really claim that. I can see it.
I think there's other things going on in Alabama that we don't need to get into that's going to prevent that kind of cover. I don't think that's going to be.
Oh, man. Honestly, Florida, it's been a while, but two titles in both. I think that pretty much seals it until anyone. I don't know if no one has two titles in both. If I'm
the same
not
year?
mistaken. Period. I'm not sure. Does anybody have multiple titles in basketball and football?
It's a good question.
We'll have to bring that up for another pod. But
that's a good question.
But I think Florida's the only one.
That's interesting. I had not considered that, but I guess it's probably.
Actually, yeah. I think no. I think I've seen this. I think Michigan State. I think Michigan State's the only other program that has multiple titles in football and basketball.
When was the last Michigan State football title?
It was like the 50s. It's a stretch for sure. But they did get Magic Johnson and then the Mateen Cleaves, the Flintstones, to beat Florida, bringing it full circle back in 2000.
There you go. Well,
I was in Fort Walton Beach with the family watching. One of the only times I can ever really remember us just spring break to the beach. But yeah. Big final, because Final Four is always that weekend, So I do remember that one vividly.
Yeah, no, we were in New York City during the Final Four when I was 13. So it would have been the 2013. Let me do the math. Carry the 2004 national title game between Tech and UConn. With Jarrett Jack, B.J. Elder, and company. And I remember distinctly watching Georgia Tech UConn at this bar in Manhattan with my family because I wanted to watch to see how it would go with Tech and UConn. And obviously UConn won. But that was a pretty amazing Tech run. And the peak of Georgia Tech basketball in the early 2000s, they had a lot of dudes, man. Will Bynum, Luke Nesherman,
Sure, was that the team that had Muhammad? The dude that could just leap out of the gym. Yeah, that Georgia Tech team, Jarrett Jack, like you said, that team was pretty good. That was like my heyday of remembering everything about sports. Like when you're 13, 14 years old and you have no other responsibilities in the world. But yeah, because that would have been that was what Oklahoma State would have made the Final Four that year.
Coach Sutton's team.
Jameer Nelson. I remember because they beat Jameer Nelson, that team, in the Elite
Joe's,
Eight.
Though.
It was
Him
a
and
game
Delonte
winner.
West.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, I'm saying, beat St. Joe's in an epic Elite Eight game, I remember. But I can't remember the fourth team in the Final Four that year, but we could look that up. But
it's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. Mecca Okafor was over there with Ben Gordon on that UConn team. They were a juggernaut, man.
Was that the year that could have been Luol Deng freshman, Duke with like Greg Paulus and that team. I think UConn did beat Duke one year in the Final Four, like a big time game.
There you go. But it's a good day all around, man.
My college basketball knowledge is great. Early 2000s.
Yeah. Hawks hired Quinn Snyder. They went on the last second. Trae Young with the game winner. So that was fun. My wife got to hear me like yelp in the living room while she's doing other stuff, and it's been a good day, man. Good weekend. It's not too bad. Took the dog to a new park. We walked through, did all that. It's getting closer to good baseball weather, spring weather. I'm just ready. I'm ready to transition to warm weather here in the South, Matt Green. I'm ready for the spring game. Are you going to go to G-Day? We're going to go to the orange and white game. It's back. 'Cause Tennessee didn't have it last year because they were doing construction on Neyland at the time. So there was technically like a little mini spring practice, but it wasn't a spring game really. Are you going to go? Have you been to a G-Day?
Oh, I've in 2016, sir, Kirby Smart called on me personally. Just like Uncle Sam said, I want you. 93K day, man. I had to show up and show out to pack out Sanford Stadium. And then I think we went a couple more times. It's cool to just go, and then it's like you're part of the crowd for a couple quarters, and you're like, yeah, this is football in April. It's super hot. Let's just go somewhere, get something to drink or something, hang out in Athens for a few hours. But yeah, it's we might go. I don't know if we've really made a decision on it either way.
This is the year to go though for Georgia, because my thing is like I can't wait because I get to see Nico, and I might not see Nico for the rest of the year. Versus Joe, and for you, it's like, I get to see the quarterback battle, like the one shot of really seeing everybody compete and seeing what they look like with Carson, Brock, and Gunner in the spring. I think it's going to be a hot ticket and actually a pretty good, intriguing G-Day this year. New OC, there's just a lot of reasons that you would want to watch this particular G-Day. I think if you're a Dog fan.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that's kind of. The storyline is essential to the spring game.
Yeah.
It's like if you have something kind of a compelling, like a 5-star quarterback coming in that's like everyone wants to see, like you said with Tennessee, or just like an interesting position battle. Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll see. I mean, you can never learn really too much from those games, but Georgia, at least as a team, is one that's a lot of the hay is in the barn, if you will. Like there shouldn't be this should be basically the team that you're going to see in the fall. Like there shouldn't be too much more going on with the portal or, I mean, even the rest of the recruiting class. It's like something like 18, 20 guys in this recruiting class, I think, are early enrollees. So you're seeing more and more of that these days. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. You can always learn a little bit, but it's like you kind of got to take it with a grain of salt.
Well, I saw an early enrollee at LSU hit the portal, or is planning to hit the portal in the spring in like May. How does that work? Is he going to burn his one-time transfer before even like getting through a spring? Like if you're an early enrollee, doesn't this count if he transfers because he is signed and on campus? Wouldn't this still count as burning your one?
I mean, do we know that that's a thing that you're going to have to sit out the second time you go?
Well, everyone's been able to get around it with graduate school. They get the one, and then everyone who's been hitting the portal haven't gone yet. Or if they have, they've graduated. So it's like we haven't really seen, it's like a strategic type of deal where a lot of guys, like the COVID year still makes everything weird. But I don't know. I think we're going to start seeing it more and more because a lot of those years are gone, and guys are going to have to be more careful about transferring twice because I think they will have to sit out. Like if that's the whole thing with Jackson Dart at Ole Miss is I think because he already burned his one and he's not ready to graduate, if he loses the job in the spring to Spencer Sanders or whatever, I think he'd have to sit out if he went to another D1 FBS program the following year. I think he would have to, like, because I don't think the waivers. I remember reading a couple weeks ago that they're going to crack down on like the waiver stuff for the one time, like, because sometimes you'll see that where they get the two without having to sit. But I think I remember reading something about it, so that would be a good thing because that's. I
mean, it would only make sense if you're going to open the floodgates. It's like, well, then like let's crack down on like the instances where it's being abused because we are being so lenient with this. It's like, hey, we're don't abuse the situation.
Well, don't forget, folks, here on this very program, this is a daily national sports podcast on this particular day, on Sunday evenings, coming to you on Monday mornings. We talk all things college football once a week on the program, twice a week during the college football season. Matt, you can find him on Twitter at Matt_W_Green. Follow myself at Chase_Thomas. Make sure to check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe. Full episodes, clips, shorts, all that kind of stuff over there. We're on TikTok at Chase Thomas Podcast. You can get the newsletter, daily newsletter, sportsrenaissanceband.substack.com. You can always get in touch with us if you'd like to get in touch with the show or have a question for Matt or myself if you want us to answer on a future college football episode. Feel free to send us an email at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. And as always, if you are an Apple Podcast or Spotify listener, make sure that you leave this show 5-star rating, interview, and are subscribed so you never miss an episode. New episodes every single day, covering it all right here on the Blue Wire Pod Network, the Chase Thomas Podcast. Okay, Matt Green.
Before you move on, I just want to update our college basketball fans out there that I was correct. It was Duke, UConn, as well as Georgia Tech, Oklahoma State. In that Final Four in San Antonio, Texas.
Good
back
pull.
in 2004. Great tournament. Looking at this, Alabama beat Stanford at 8-1 in the 8-1 upset in the second round. UAB beat Kentucky and a 9-1 upset in the second round. Big time March Madness per usual.
I think this year is going to be bonkers because there's no elite team this year. This year is just going to be an absolute madhouse. In terms of picking games, it's just you can make a case for 40 teams to actually run the gauntlet and win it all this year. It's pretty wild. Outside of the Dogs, who lost by I think 50 again over the weekend, I don't think they're going to make the tournament or win it all.
They are not one of those 40 teams that are in contention. So. No, it's been a bad month of February for the Dogs. They've had some lopsided losses.
Yeah, couldn't relate. Matt Green, we have some college football we are going to talk about on this very program. We're going to get into our spring SEC quarterback rankings ahead of the spring ball practice, and some of these competitions are wide open. We'll see if they end up winning, but I did my list, and I am assuming you did your list based on who you think is going to be QB1 at every single destination. And then we're also going to do a couple of way too early college football predictions, and then the SEC on CBS Games of the Week preview for each one. So, Matt, before we even get started, which would you rather start with? Would you rather do the SEC on CBS, or would you rather do the spring quarterback rankings? Oh, you're muted, Matt Green. You went muted.
I muted myself.
There you are.
It's almost like you put that appetite. You said the quarterback first, so it got my mind. That's where my appetite is. So let's get these quarterback rankings going.
Okay. Well, we both did our own list here going into 2023. I think we should start with bottom. I think we should go 14 and up, right? I think that makes more sense. Is to start from the worst and go to the best. We'll end on the best. What do you think? Or do you think we should start with the best and go to the worst? What do you think?
Let's just start with the best so we don't confuse anybody. I don't know. Let's because we can kind of go down the list because where we kind of disagree here.
That's fair. Well, we're going to disagree right away, Matt Green. So who is your number one?
I was shocked to see this guy so low on your list because I feel like he is, I think, by far the highest floor of any SEC quarterback. I think he's just very consistent. You know what you're getting. But also a super high ceiling. I think there's a potential that he gets even better in 2023. And that's KJ Jefferson. I think it was a subpar year for Arkansas. Definitely disappointing. Not what they thought they could be, like a dark horse top 10 type of team. But KJ Jefferson, I think, is still especially it's pretty unproven class of SEC quarterbacks going into 2023. I think KJ Jefferson's the safest pick.
Here's the problem, Matt Green. Do you know who's not calling plays for the Arkansas Razorbacks next year?
Briles.
Kendall Briles is not calling plays for the Arkansas Razorbacks next year. So when people are talking about KJ, I was like, I would have KJ higher. He's number 5 on my list, Matt Green. KJ Jefferson has been fantastic through 2 years. He was banged up last year. That was a big reason why Arkansas kind of fell off a little bit. Was KJ was banged up. He's great. He's super efficient. Like, he's passing for almost 70% completion rate his last 2 years. Super efficient. Doesn't do dumb stuff with the ball. Someone you can count on. Good leader. 24 TDs, 5 picks, 81 quarterback rating. Like, he was fine last year. Big, 6'3", 242. I like him. Like,
he's a legit power runner, like a Taj Boyd, but maybe even more so.
Yeah, I like KJ Jefferson. I like Kendall Briles as a play caller. I don't like Dan Enos as a play caller. Find me a Miami fan that enjoyed the Dan Enos experience. Find me a Maryland fan who was like, yeah, our offense was cooking last year. Like, it was all systems go with Dan Enos. You go up and down the list. Dan Enos is it's just not great. The history's not great there. I think it's a downgraded offensive coordinator for KJ, unfortunately, and a big year for him. So I understand giving him the benefit of the doubt because he has proven a lot over the last 2 years in Fayetteville. I just have him a little bit lower, and I have him at 5 on my list, which with the possibility of, like, if you told me he ended up being the number 1 quarterback in the conference this year, it wouldn't surprise me. But I think right now it's a significant downgrade, and I want to see what he looks like without Kendall Briles and with Dan Enos, because I think this offense takes a step back, and I don't think Arkansas is as, I think they still flirt with 6-6, 7-5 this year. I think the West is better across the board, and I think you can make the case no one benefits less from the West being better next year than the Hogs. Is that fair?
See, 5 is crazy to me, though, because there are so many unproven guys. So it's almost like everyone you have behind KJ Jefferson is pretty unproven, although
I would disagree.
I'm surprised at how low you have one guy, but we'll get to him. But then you have even a couple more unproven guys ahead of KJ Jefferson. So
I have one unproven guy ahead of KJ Jefferson, sir. I have one ahead of him that is unproven, and I'll give you the one.
Well, here we can keep going down the list, and we'll get to it. But
okay, my number 1 though.
Yeah,
Jayden Daniels. I don't even think it's a contest. I think people are overthinking Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels balled out this past year. They go to the SEC title game. There was questions all last summer, like, is he going to be the guy? Is it going to be Garrett Nussmeier? Is it going to be who's the guy who retired? I already forgot. Miles Brennan. If he's going to be QB1, like, there was a huge competition. He just won it, and he was really good by the end of the year. He finished strong. He is obviously incredible with his legs. He beat Alabama last year. Obviously, Tennessee blew him out, but, like, I still think a lot of it was just he looked like a different guy late. I mean, he lit up the Georgia secondary. Like, he had a pretty good game by and large against Georgia.
It was it was really the backup that came in that really Nussmeier was the one that actually threw for more yards. I want to say in that game.
But Jayden wasn't bad. Jayden had a good game.
Yeah.
And Jayden Daniels, I think going into next year, if I had to say who has the best Heisman odds of anyone in this conference going into next year, I think it's Jayden. Like, I love what he did to end the year. I think LSU is going to be really good. I would not be surprised if LSU's back in the SEC title game next year. I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the playoff. I don't know. I think, like, he set a single season rushing yard record at LSU and rushing TD record. He can pass. There's obviously talent out the wazoo at wideout for Jayden. I just look at QB1 if I had to bet on who has the best season in 2023 of any quarterback and what kind of situation they're walking into in 2023. I think Jayden Daniels is number 1. I think the sky's the limit for him in year 2 of this system with the talent, with the coaching staff, and with what we saw this LSU team being ahead of the curve in year 1 for Brian Kelly. So I'm all in on the Jayden Daniels LSU experience. So I think it's fair to have him at 1. Where did you have Jayden Daniels?
So yeah, I don't hate him at 1. I think he's got the highest ceiling. I have him at 2. So I'm right there with you. I think he's got that potential to be. If I was saying, like, the guy with the best chance to be a Heisman finalist, I honestly might say him over KJ Jefferson because LSU has more national championship contender, ability than Arkansas does, and he is a dynamic player. I still question. He was the starter all season last year. He only threw 17 touchdowns. He only threw 3 picks at the same time. Obviously,
he doesn't turn the ball over.
11 rushing touchdowns and almost 900 yards rushing. So he was doing a lot on the ground. And I think a lot of it was out of necessity at times for LSU's offense. So Keyshawn Butte, he's coming back for next year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of your best weapons. Year 2 of Brian Kelly, like LSU could take a big step up. So I don't hate him at 1. Like I said, I got him at number 2.
All right.
Who's your number 2?
Devin Leary, Matt Green, our old friend. I think people, when they're doing these lists, have to include the situation that they're dealing with. Liam Cohen's back in the fold at UK. And look, I love dunking on Kentucky. I love playing Kentucky. I love the rivalry between Kentucky. But look, I think he's going to have a great year. I think Devin Leary is a really good quarterback. I think he showed a lot at NC State. They were right there. He's beaten Clemson. He's had some big-time games. He won a crap ton of games at NC State. He just got injured. He moved on. There's a history. Will Levis had his best season under Liam Cohen 2 years ago. He's back in the fold. There's a lot of talent on this UK team. I think the defense will be better. I think the offensive line will be better. I think this situation is just perfect for Devin Leary to have the second best season, but the best season of any quarterback in the SEC East this year. I think he's proven a lot. I think he's in a good system. I think it's a team that can win 9 to 10 games this fall. No, I think Devin Leary is going to be the second best quarterback in this conference this year.
I don't hate that. You're right about the situation with Liam Cohen and everything. It's which Devin Leary are you getting? Are you getting 2021 Devin Leary, who threw 35 touchdowns and 5 picks, like pretty much balled out for, I don't know if he was first team all ACC, but I think he was the best quarterback in the ACC that year. Versus last year, he only played 6 games. He had dealt with some injuries, 11 touchdowns and 4 picks over, not even half a season. Like that's solid. Extrapolate that. It's still not 35-5. But Kentucky allowed the most sacks in the SEC a year ago. Like, Will Levis is a top 10 first-round draft pick. I say that with air quotes. Like, if he truly is an elite quarterback talent like the NFL seems to think he is, then he was in an absolutely awful situation in 2022. Kentucky was the worst offense in the SEC, partly because I don't think Will Levis is a first-round quarterback, but regardless, like they weren't good. They were terrible on the offensive line. They didn't run the ball like they typically do. They didn't really have any playmakers like they did with Wan'Dale Robinson in 2021. So I don't know how good of a situation Leary's really going into. To be fair, I have him at 3 because I think Devin Leary is a good player. And, regardless of the situation, sometimes you can still judge that a guy could be better given his situation. So I do think Devin Leary still has the potential, that 2021 is kind of who he is. But I think at Kentucky, his stats might not reflect being the third best quarterback in the SEC. Like he feels like one that I wouldn't be shocked if we're coming back here, at the end of the season and we say he's the 10th best quarterback in the SEC. Just because Kentucky's situation, yeah, it might be improved, but I'm not sure how much.
That's fair. The Brown kid's really good. His last name's Brown. I forgot. It's not Bryce Brown.
Oh yeah, you're right. It is an alliteration name. Number 6. I want to say, right?
He returns punts and does other stuff. Yeah. He's super fast. Like, he's going to be really good. He was like their lone real threat out wide for the last year's Kentucky team. I forgot his name, but he's back. So that should be helpful for the Cats. I just think I'm betting on a bounce back year for Mike Stoops' team. So Mark Stoops, excuse me. But he's your number 3. So Devin Leary, we're close.
Barry and Brown.
That's it. But yeah, you have Devin Leary at 3. I have him at 2. So pretty close. We see it about the same. Pretty close overall through 3 of these. My number 3, though, which is kind of funny, because this is how we prove that I am not some just hack homer over here, Matt Green. Who did I put? Is this how we
prove that?
This is how we prove it. And look, folks, check us out on youtube.com/ChaseThomasPodcast to get a good glimpse of the orange and the new layout here from Matt Green, who personally selected that gaudy orange here on the program. It's pretty great. All that being said,
I would never.
Carson Beck is my number 3. I think anyone whose list does not include a Georgia quarterback, whoever you think it's going to be in the top 3, is just trying to be a contrarian. Like, I don't know if Carson Beck will be as good as Stetson Bennett. I don't think so. Do I think he's going to be really productive? Do I think he has an unbelievable amount of talent around him? Yes. Do I think Bobo will still be a good offensive coordinator and they will still be the best offense in the SEC outside of Tennessee next year? Yes, I do. Outside of maybe Ole Miss. I'll throw Ole Miss. I think there's an outside chance that they could be too. That being said, Carson Beck, I think, has to be in my top 3. So I think he's going to win the job. I think he sat 4 years, and you're like, oh, it's a new system. Well, it's like Bobo was there last year. I'm sure he got a lot of good work in with Bobo. A lot's not going to change with this offense. Obviously, the receiver room's still loaded. You still have Brock Bowers. You still have a cornucopia of running backs who can catch out of the backfield. You're going to have a great defense. I think Carson Beck's just going to put up bonkers numbers for the Dogs, and I think it'll look close to what JT Daniels looked like the first couple weeks 2 years ago. It's just you'll get the full scope with Beck, and I mean he's a polished guy who's waited his turn. I think he should be great. Like Carson Beck, you should bet on to be one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the SEC next year.
Yeah, and I don't have much to add to that. I think Carson Beck's obviously in a great situation. Georgia's pretty much loaded, all around him, and just in terms of, I think they were they number 1 in the country in sacks allowed last year, maybe
yes.
Only behind like some triple option teams or something like that. But yeah, so the offensive line, I imagine, is going to keep him clean, and like you said, Brock Bowers is still there, and he's going to make any quarterback look pretty damn good. I don't think it's a contrarian to not have him in your top 3. I think there's an assumption to be made if you're having him in the top 3, and it's, maybe Georgia is at that level of what Bama's always been and what Ohio State has always been, and maybe USC for a period there where whatever guys started, we're going to assume a certain level of production. They haven't necessarily had just, unquestioned production, guy after guy at the quarterback position. They haven't had bad quarterback play by any means, but it is an assumption to just think Carson Beck is going to be ready from day one. I do tend to think he's going to be really good next year, and Georgia won't be much worse offensively. I have Carson Beck at 5 with that, but I feel like it's also like some guys have proven more. But I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we're sitting here at the end of the year and we're talking about Carson Beck being first team all SEC either. Like, I think with what Georgia is on offense, like it could even be a more traditional, like Stetson Bennett made a lot of, those improvisational plays with his legs and everything. And Carson Beck seems like a decent athlete, but maybe Georgia's offense is just a more traditional, like, quarterback who's got a stronger arm, and that's kind of how Carson Beck is advertised. So it could be like a different kind of look of the same thing they did in 2022.
I mean, would it shock you if he throws for 4,000 yards next year?
No, not at all.
I think he hits 4,000. I think he's going to be.
Stetson is the first Georgia quarterback ever to hit 4,000. It could potentially be a 14, 15 games that could get him there, but
I think
I wouldn't be shocked at all.
Number 4, this is a big disagreement for us because your number 4 I have significantly lower, and I think this might rattle some cages in a certain part of the South, Matt Green. So who is your number 4?
Yeah, this is not a side I was expecting to be on. I'm usually arguing against this guy. But Will Rogers, like, we know what guys do. I think maybe your assumption is what he's going to do in 2023 without Mike Leach. And that's fair. But I think we could finally see. I imagine Mississippi State is going to try to do everything they can to continue what Mike Leach had going, but that might be easier said than done. But I think to this point, Will Rogers has proven to be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC. And with so many just kind of with so much uncertainty, I felt like 4, like I said, I have Carson Beck at 5. So I wouldn't be surprised if Carson Beck is better than him. So I guess I was giving him more credit for what he has done versus what he may do in 2023.
The thing about it, he was throwing 50 times a game with all these shorts. Like, they're not running the air raid anymore. That's out, Matt Green. Zach Arnett is installing a different offense. They're going to be back to the ground and pound. Like, they are going to run the ball. They are going to try and hit you in the mouth. They brought back that defensive line coach, I think, who developed Chris Jones into the superstar defensive tackle that he is. Like, they're going to be a smash mouth team again. I just don't think it's a good fit for him. And I think I was kind of surprised he stayed at Mississippi State, because I'm like, I don't know if this is going to go well. I think his stock might just crater. It kind of reminds me, here's my comparison. Remember what happened? Like, this was something I was nervous about last year before the year with UVA. Tony Elliott, who comes in, and he brings in the Brennan Armstrong situation, right? Where Brennan Armstrong was just bad. Like, Brennan Armstrong went from one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC, the Southpaw, putting up bonker stats with the OC, who is now the OC at NC State, where he just transferred to, but was the OC at Syracuse this past year. I think Anai is his last name. I am blanking on his first name. But that was the perfect system for him. Tony Elliott's system was just not. It doesn't mean Tony Elliott's system is not good in what he was running at Clemson. It was a bad scheme fit. And it wasn't what he was doing for years. And it's kind of rough to throw that wrench into their development that late in their college career. And he had a rough year. And he transferred, he lost, and we'll see if he gets it back at NC State this fall or even wins the job outright, because they have MJ Morris there, who started a bunch of games with Devin Leary out. I don't think it's going to be that kind of high-profile offense. I don't think they're going to be putting up a bunch of points. I don't think it's going to be flashy. I think it's going to be one where he's not throwing nearly as much as what he did. And I think it's just asking a lot to change a lot of what he did this year versus what he did previous years. And we'll see. I mean, they got the App State offensive coordinator this past year to be their new OC. But if you watched Chase Bryce last year and you watched how App State played, they scored a lot of points, but it wasn't at all what you saw from Mike Leach in the air raid. I just think there's just an opportunity for it just not to be the best fit. And I like Will Rogers. I hope it works out. So just an unfortunate situation. I'm still high on the staff that Zach Arnett's built. I think they're going to be fine, but I don't like the scenario he's walking into this spring. I think it could be a bad fit, and I think he could have a down year. I'm just betting on a down Will Rogers year, unfortunately.
No, I could definitely see that. I think you made some good points. I think there is something to be said for, like, this guy can throw the ball 40, 50 times a game and not turn it over a lot, be productive in the passing game and, be super efficient. So I think if you're a new OC, it's like, yeah, you might have an identity of what you want to do, but, like, you do know that you still have a quarterback that is able to air it out. And obviously with the air raid is a lot of short stuff, and we've seen a lot of guys of differing abilities have success in the air raid. So it's a huge change, but I'll give Will Rogers the benefit of the doubt going into 2023.
Brandon Langlois.
Where did you have him?
I have him at 8.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So middle of the road in the SEC.
A little bit different there.
Yeah. So Brandon Langlois, I don't know how to pronounce it, so apologies, but he's the senior associate AD at Mississippi State. He tweeted this in September. Mississippi State's Will Rogers threw for 400-plus yards for the 6th time in his career last Saturday. No SEC quarterback since 1999 has logged more career 400-plus yard passing games than Rogers. That's who he was. Like, he was really good at it, and it's going to be so different. I don't know. I would like to be wrong on that one for the story, but Hey,
potentially having a little complimentary run game could even help his passing stats a little bit. His efficiency, that is.
Very much could. My number 4, though, is Spencer Sanders, who I could see actually being number 1, number 2 by season's end. Matt Green, I think he's going to beat out Jackson Dart this spring. I think Spencer Sanders is going to be QB1 at Ole Miss. I think he came in with an idea, like he could have started at like Florida or other spots, Auburn, right away. I think the fact that he went there tells him that, like, I could probably win this job. Like Jackson Dart, I like Spencer Sanders. Spencer Sanders was one play away from potentially making the college football playoff a year ago.
Back in 2021?
Yes, like right there. We've seen the best of Spencer Sanders, which is a really, really good college quarterback. There's some Hendon Hooker vibes here for me, where he goes into the SEC. He's shown some flashes. He's been close. he gets partnered up with the second best play caller and offensive mind in the conference now. Lane and Josh lead the conference, and it's not even particularly close with Todd Monken exiting the building. And Lane is going to put this dude in a position to succeed. You get Quinshon Jenkins, who I think is the number 1 running back in the conference this year. He's back. I think there's talent galore. They've obviously cleaned up in the portal. I'm pretty high on Ole Miss going into this fall. I think they're going to bounce back after kind of a rocky end where their schedule was just completely uneven. We talked about it all season where it's like they're going to gobble up these early wins, but man, their schedule is just brutal down the stretch. It's just not an even schedule for them. One really fair for the Rebs. I think they're going to be really good in 2023, and I think Spencer Sanders is going to put up really good numbers because guess what? Quarterbacks put up good numbers. Like, I think it's going to be a Matt Corral type year where I think he's in the Heisman conversation. I think Ole Miss is winning 9 or 10 games this fall with Spencer Sanders. I think he's going to have a really good year, move up the draft boards, and ball out in Oxford, Mississippi. So I think he's in my top 4 to start.
So I don't disagree with a lot of what you said there, except for if you think all these things, how do you have him at number 4? I feel like that's number 1 right there. You got him going to New York right now. Ole Miss going 10-2. I don't hate that. I actually have Spencer Sanders at 6. I definitely think he's going to win the job. And Hendon Hooker thing, I think that's a good call. I've seen people talking about Graham Mertz being the next Hendon Hooker or whatever you want to. I just don't see that jump. Maybe we can at least call it a Hendon Hooker jump now instead of a Joe Burrow jump because that was just that was stupid. You know, like predicting who's the next LeBron James. Like let's just stop that. So I could see Spencer Sanders. He's the same type of player at Oklahoma State that Hooker was at Virginia Tech. Even a better passer in terms of stats. So the potential is there. Obviously, with Lane Kiffin in that offense, there's a potential that Spencer Sanders could be a dangerous player. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC, but I don't know that you're talking best case scenario for sure with all that. Like I don't know that he's all that, but I could definitely see him having like a Matt Corral type year. But if you remember, like the Matt Corral type year, like the Heisman hype wasn't really legitimate. Like it was a lot of stat padding versus the bad teams and, you know, like the intangible stuff, like just having like 30 carries and like a hard fought win versus Tennessee and Knoxville and everything. It was like his numbers at the end of the day, like they weren't as good as like even Stetson Bennett's were, who got so much flack in 2022. Like, so Corral, like it could be a Corral type of year. Like I don't hate on that, but I don't know that I feel like Corral's 2021 year was kind of overrated. So I don't know how to evaluate that. You know what I'm saying?
That's fair. Corral was a dog though. That guy, he took some hits, and Spencer Sanders is much bigger. And Matt Corral just kept getting up, man. Like it blew my mind. He took some shots. He's not a big dude, and just kept battling. So
no, he definitely did. And the way he was used in the running game was shocking to me. So the fact that he was used the way he was, like Spencer Sanders seems like he's more built for playing that style.
Yeah, and Jackson's not really that guy. He's more of a pocket guy. He doesn't have that mobility that Spencer provides. I just think he's more of what maybe Lane Kiffin would prefer to really open up this offense. But we'll see.
20 touchdowns, 5 picks Corral had that year. Like not like the most impressive passing, but what was efficient and, you know, 11 touchdowns, stats, 600 yards and 11 touchdowns on the ground. Yeah. So, yeah, he was a warrior that year for sure.
Number 5 for you is Carson Beck, who we talked about. Spencer Sanders is number 6 for you. So we're right there. My number 6 is not your number 6. He's all the way down at 10 for you. Here's the thing.
Got him at 10. Barely cracked the top 10. I had him at 11 at first, but I bumped him up there to 10.
I bet you a lot of Tennessee fans who listen to this show were like, what in the heck is going on here? Like we're already we're closing in on midway through this list, and Joe Milton's name has not come up. Let me just say, I don't think there is a harder quarterback to forecast in the SEC next year than Joe Milton. Not one. And it's not even particularly close. Like, you could tell me Joe Milton has a Heisman year and he goes top 5 in the draft next year, and it wouldn't surprise me. Anthony Richardson might go number 1 overall. Like, Joe Milton's arm and his size.
Anthony Richardson is not going number 1. I refuse to believe this.
But it's out there, is what I'm saying. Like, he's going top 10. The fact that it's out there.
I don't want to derail you. Keep your Joe Milton going.
So when people hear me say that, I'm like, I'm not saying like I would do it. I am saying Joe Milton being a top 5 quarterback in the draft next year would not surprise me at all. Joe Milton flaming out and not being the starter by season's end would also not surprise me in the least bit. One of the things that I think Tennessee
him not being the starter by like the Alabama game wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, here's what's funny. Okay, I'm going to pull up Tennessee's schedule because the Go Big Orange Friday show, we've been talking about this. And here's the game this fall, where we're going to know for sure is when they pull the plug, if they do. It's UTSA, September 23rd, Matt Green. So they open with Virginia in a neutral site. They'll be fine. They'll win. Austin Peay, gimme. They'll win big. At Florida, he can be shaky there. Like, even if he still wins and he's shaky, whatever. He loses at Florida with Graham Mertz. We have a problem. He gets out-dueled by Graham Mertz. It's bad look. He struggles, doesn't play well on the road there, and they lose, and they're 2-1. UTSA is a really good team. Matt Green, you love the Roadrunners. Guess who's back for like his 19th year of college? Their quarterback, Mr. Harris. Their coaching staff still there. Taylor's still there. They're going to put up points in Neyland. I'm going to be in the building. Tennessee fans are going to get a little bit uncomfortable because it's going to be a shootout, and it's going to be one of those where everyone around the SEC is like, is UTSA up 21-7 on the Vols in like the third quarter? What's happening here? Or it's like 56-49 the fourth. That's where it's like, okay, Joe, if he's getting out-dueled at home by UTSA, and the thing about Joe, and that what he...
Hey, but if it's 56-49, that's not on the offense.
Or if he's down 35-14 because the offense has gone 3 and out 3 or 4 times and UTSA has just done whatever on offense.
If it's 17-13 in the fourth quarter, that's when the panic button starts to set in on the starting quarterback.
Well, I think the path is there, right? Like, you lose to Florida and then you're struggling with UTSA. And then you have South Carolina looming right after that, where it's like, no, we're not doing the South Carolina nonsense again too. So but it also wouldn't surprise me if he's just great in all of these games. Like, none of it would surprise me because he has all the talent in the world, but it's also, he's so different than Hendon. And like, you read the different pieces on Hendon, like Hendon was a leader. He was an all-encompassing leader. Like, he was doing Zoom meetings with the team after he was taken out with his injury, like for bowl games. Like, he was just still very much involved, and he and Joe had this great relationship. He's gone. And the vibe I get, like, it just, Joe doesn't have to be the same guy as Hendon, but he's just different personality types. He's just more fun. Guys like him, and I don't know if he'll be the accountability quarterback, where it's like he's going to keep everybody in line. He's going to make sure everything's humming at all degrees. Like, Hendon was so good with his legs that he knew when to run, when not to. Joe's a pocket guy. He'll take bad sacks. He took some bad ones in the Miami game, or in the Clemson game. A lot of 3 and outs. Got the cannon arm. Squirrel White will have a big year. Like, that will still happen, but I think it's going to be clunky. But there's so much talent where I'm like, how far could a Josh Heupel offense really fall, even if he's average? Because we've just seen 2 years of it just humming. Like, this team just is going to put up points. The offense cannot be stopped to a degree by most teams. Like, yeah, the Georgia of the world can do stuff. But by and large, Heupel's been able to do whatever he wants offensively against just about whoever he's played to this point.
But there's also an element of it, too. If Spencer Rattler doesn't get benched at Oklahoma in 2021, if Caleb Williams isn't the backup, so that's the other aspect to this, is that Joe Milton, he's not going to have the longest leash because you got Nico right behind him. It's like, if the offense isn't getting it done, well, let's see what this other guy can do. So I I don't agree with you on the timeline because looking at Tennessee's schedule, after UTSA, you have South Carolina and then a bye week. So it's like the bye week seems like a decision will be made of like, is it Joe Milton the rest of the way, or are we going to actually, give Nico a shot or something like that? So
If they have 2 losses at that bye week, I think he's out. Because then you still have Georgia and Bama on the calendar. I think you're just looking at, I don't know, you're not playing for an SEC East title. You're not playing for a playoff opportunity. The thing too, and like you said with Nico's he's by all accounts an awesome kid, awesome teammate, and I can't wait to see him play in Neyland. That being said, we have not seen a 5-star, Tennessee fans. I've been in the building when they were chanting for Harrison Bailey when Joe Milton was airmailing balls in the Pitt game. I was there when he was doing it against Bowling Green. People run easy. People are what is, this is ridiculous. This is not fun. This is extremely frustrating. But there wasn't a true heir apparent behind him. This is a 5-star number 1 player in all of college football coming into the fold. This is the highest rated quarterback you've had and the most hyped since Peyton Manning. This is a totally different deal. Nico is an easy name to chant. Nico is going to be loud. Nico is going to be front and center, and it's not going to be the kid's fault. But any mess up by Joe Milton, there are going to be chants for Nico. It's going to be an uncomfortable season if he's not electric. So I worry about the situation because he needs to be awesome to keep those people at bay, and he can't even have off games. I feel bad for him. I just think it's going to be a tough situation for him if he struggles a little bit. But it's also he didn't throw a pick last year when he played. He threw 10 TDs, no picks. He was good in the Orange Bowl. He'll probably be fine. I just think it's a downgrade from Hendon, and I think people are discounting just how electric and how good Hendon Hooker was across the board. Hendon, you can make the case he doesn't get hurt. He's absolutely a Heisman finalist. I don't know if that's going to be Joe. I don't know if that's there, and we still haven't seen it to this point in his career. I think he's the hardest person to forecast, and if you told me Nico was the starter by season's end, I wouldn't be surprised. If you told me Joe Milton was a Heisman finalist, I wouldn't be surprised. It's all over the place with Joe. I have no idea.
Yeah, and that's why I think I have him at, I want to say 10. Yeah, so I have him at 10. And we just kind of glossed over Virginia, in the opener. That's a Power 5 opponent. If you don't have everything kind of, the way it should be, how, Tennessee had to go up to Pittsburgh last year, or even play Pittsburgh at home the year before, that, and neither of those were easy games. So Pittsburgh's obviously better than Virginia, but yeah. So Florida being that first real challenge and on the road, if Joe Milton, if Tennessee loses that game, I think that UTSA game is an agreed upon Nico's getting the 3rd and 4th series or something like that. So it'll be a situation where the quarterback situation will be in flux.
For sure. Your number 7 though is who? Because we have different ones here, so this will be good. Who is your number 7? Because this stunned me, Matt Green. When I saw this, I was like, Matt Green is going. This is an interesting take. I am ready for Matt Green to clear the lane, ISO, and make the case for this one. I'm excited. Matt Green, who's your number 7?
Well, I do want to preface this by saying a lot of uncertainty in the SEC at the quarterback position, but a guy that I feel gets overlooked. I was shocked to see where he was on your list. Brady Cook from Missouri. This guy only threw 14 touchdowns, 7 picks a year ago. Had 585 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground. This guy's an athlete. And Missouri's offense, it was not great in 2022. But I feel there were signs. There was some times where Brady Cook really showed his playmaking ability. And I look at this list, I don't have a hot take Brady Cook's gonna be a Heisman dark horse or anything, but I feel it's more of an indictment on the bottom half of the SEC quarterbacks for 2023. I don't see a lot of real big time players. If you're a betting man, would I be surprised if whoever wins the Alabama job is better than Brady Cook in 2023? Not at all. But I was really impressed at times of what he did at Missouri in 2022.
He was good in the bowl game against Wake Forest. But I have some funny tweets for you on Brady Cook. St. Louis Cup of Joe, Mizzou fan. Brady Cook is easily the most inaccurate QB in Mizzou history. He's tweeted on November 5th. Patrick Doherty, great NFL writer. I think also a Mizzou fan, maybe an alum. Brady Cook is a Tier 5 level purveyor of Mizzou pain. I think all this for you, Matt Green, is you're just showing the Tigers some love because they had the dogs and the ropes late, almost beat the dogs and upended their perfect SEC record by just getting after Stetson in that offense for 3
Hey, Missouri's a quality team. You don't just go into Como.
That's what you're doing
now.
here. You're talking up the Tigers. You just are all bought in on the Kool-Aid. You're like, he really showed out against my team, and I just got to throw the Mizzou Tigers a bone here. That's what's happening.
Did he have that good of a? I don't even think he had that great of a game against Georgia.
He had that deep bomb to Mookie Cooper at one point.
Okay, 20 of 32 for 192 and a touchdown and no picks is probably one of his better performances. I say that as someone who's trying to compliment Brady Cook, but he only had four. He had 4 for negative 11 rushing. I think he got sacked a few times in that one, so he didn't really make any plays on Georgia. But at Tennessee, he had 16 for 106 on the ground. Versus Arkansas, 18 for 138. He had a couple big time 100-yard rushing games. So I just think he's a dynamic playmaker, and I think when you get to this kind of lower half of the SEC quarterbacks, I think I'm rolling the dice with Brady Cook.
Brandon Kiley tweeted this. This is a fun stat. Brad Smith, remember him? Mizzou legend from many
absolutely.
years ago.
He was their all-time leading passer and all-time leading rusher when he was done at Mizzou.
Well, it's funny you say that. This Brandon tweeted, Brady Cook this was on November 25th when they beat Arkansas, who you alluded to, 29-27. Big win for them to end the program, to end the season for them. It's a good rivalry. I like Arkansas-Mizzou. Brady Cook became the first Mizzou quarterback to throw for 240 and run for 140 since Brad Smith. The offense averaged 7.7 yards per play for the first time in 2 years. So, hey, I'm a little hard. It wouldn't surprise me if he's a middle-of-the-road guy. Wouldn't surprise me. I think that's a good buy low pick. For
sure. I mean, you look at the game log, 3 touchdowns, no picks versus Abilene Christian, 3 touchdowns, no picks versus New Mexico State. Those definitely helped the season totals there by the end, but he's definitely a guy who's going to have to take a step up. But Eli Drinkowitz, he's got Luther Burden, a big-time playmaker out wide, so we'll see what they can do.
My number 7, who's not even on your list because you think another quarterback is going to win this job. Ty Simpson, the former 5-star quarterback out of Tennessee. I don't think Alabama's defense or offense is going to be great. I don't think so. I could not, this is going to be weird because of what we've seen for several years now with Kiffin, with Sark, with Bill O'Brien, with Mike Loxley. Tommy Rees ain't that. This is going to be a defense, run the ball down your throat type of Alabama that we have not seen in over a decade. Ty Simpson just fits more of that mold, right? Where they're trying to bring back the Brody Croyles, the John Parker Wilsons, the statue quarterbacks. I don't think Jaden Milroe is the fit for this.
Why would they ever try to bring that back? You don't want to go back to the Brody Croyle era?
I think Saban wants to go back to those A.J. McCarron. A.J. was the peak, I think, of what that Alabama just run it down your throats.
I think there's no way that Saban is seeing these offenses I'd rather have A.J. McCarron where we're just scoring 30 points and winning games 17-13. You think that's what Nick Saban
absolutely
wants?
What he wants.
I think Nick Saban wants the team to play elite defense. That's all they have to do. You don't have to stop scoring points. You just have to start getting stops on defense.
I think he looks at it as possessions, right? Where if we hoard possessions, we're not going for points, we're not going for tempo, we're not doing any of that. We're holding the ball and we're playing great defense and we're just gonna out muscle you, out 5-star you, and out physical you. And I think that's just what it's going to look like. The Tyrese offenses at Notre Dame have not been good, but it's also just like the Ian Books of the world where I don't think Jaden Milroe is going to be the starter here. I think he's going to transfer and he might be okay somewhere else, but based on what we saw in that A&M game, right, where there was no downfield, there was no real legit passing threat there at the moment. He still seemed pretty green, and maybe he improves a lot this spring. We'll see. I just think of what this offense is transitioning to from what we saw. Like if it was O'Brien or Sark or Kiffin, I would lean Milrow. But I just think with Tommy Rees coming in, the writing's on the wall that this is going to be Ty Simpson's team. And I just think it's going to be average. I think this Alabama offense won't be great. I think it's going to be average.
I think if you want to go back to that, I think Jalen Milrow is the guy. Like if you're wanting to run the ball better, I think the guy, like the quarterback being an element of the running game, like kind of how Jalen Hurts was with in 2017, like that offense almost had 3 1,000-yard rushers, I think. I want to say Harris, I'm not sure they had one. I want to say Harris was at Scarborough that year, and Hurts were all in like 900 and something. So, or that could be 2016, but that's kind of what Jalen Hurts was, kind of the game manager, throwing 15, 18 touchdowns, like 1 or 2 picks, and then being a part of the running game. So I don't think you have to go back to Brody Croyle to like be physical. I think if you're gonna have 2, questionable quarterbacks, I think the guy who doesn't turn it over and has an athleticism as part of his game, I think can sometimes win that job. So like you said, I have Milrow on my list. I have him at 11, so just behind Joe Milton. I don't know that he's going to be good, and I also think Tommy Rees is going to be under this microscope, but like it was Bill O'Brien last year, and he's a super proven coordinator at every level. And this offense, and it was still really good. They averaged like 40 points a game with a Heisman Trophy winner, but we all talked about how these playmakers just were not the typical Alabama playmakers. And if you look at what they are in 2023, like Jermaine Burton is back. Is Jermaine Burton the best receiver on this team? Like that's not a great sign. I know Trayshawn Holden transferred, and I'm blanking on Ja'Cory Brooks. Ja'Cory Brooks is still there, right?
Yes.
So Ja'Cory Brooks is probably their number one, but it's like Ja'Cory Brooks and Jermaine Burton. Like we've had years where those guys would be like the 5th best receiver on Alabama, where you have Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and just an embarrassment of riches. And I mean, blanking on the other ones. They had Calvin Ridley, like John Mechie. There you go. Like Henry Ruggs. Like they were just absolutely loaded with like first round talent. And now it's like it's not even the best receiving room in the SEC probably. So it's Tommy Rees is the one that's going to get blamed for this, but I think the talent right there isn't where they are to be what the offense they were with Tua and with Mac Jones. Like I think because of the personnel, I mean you're recruiting some damn good running backs in this 2023 class too. So like that might just be the strength of the team, and that's what you're going to have to go with.
For sure. My number 8 was Will Rogers. Your 8 is different, but this guy is right neck and neck with us. I have Conner Weigman at 10. You have Conner Weigman at 8. Why are you a little bit higher? Because I flirted with putting him a little bit up, and it's because Bobby Petrino, you go through the quarterbacks in his life that he's coached. Not a lot of bad quarterback play in the Bobby Petrino college football era.
For sure. I think he was like 8 touchdowns and 0 picks last year, and very limited action, a couple starts there at the end of the year. But exactly, you kind of made my point with Bobby Petrino at offensive coordinator. And I want to say it's Weigman, right? Conner Weigman?
Weigman, yeah.
I think
it's spelled like Weigman. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, with Petrino running the offense, like I don't know, is it fool's gold? Like, is it fool me once, shame on me? Or fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice? Fool me, you're not going to fool me again, right? Isn't that what George Bush said? Mm-hmm. So I feel like with Texas A&M, you're just like, they have so much talent. Jimbo, he's a good coach, right? Like I'm trying to convince myself, but with Petrino coming in, who knows how the personalities are going to clash or whatever's going to go on there. But like you said, they have such a track record, or Bobby Petrino specifically has such a track record of coaching good offenses. And Conner Weigman's looked good in his limited time so far. So I think I could see him having a pretty good year next year. But like 8, it's still middle of the road SEC.
Can I say this? He could be the number 1 quarterback in the SEC next year. This is another one where I'm like, they have the talent. Can I read off their depth chart on offense with Bobby Petrino calling plays? Conner Weigman at QB, Ruben Owens at running back, Ainias Smith is back, folks. Evan Stewart is back. Moose Muhammad is back. Donovan Green is back. they lost a lot of dudes in the portal, but like this offense is sneaky loaded with 5 stars and a bunch of talent. Like there is with Bobby Petrino with this group. Would not surprise me if this Texas A&M offense is really, really good. It also wouldn't surprise me if Jimbo Fisher like doesn't allow it to completely be Bobby Petrino's thing and this offense sputters. Like you said, we just have to see it. Like A&M is the ultimate. I need to see what they look like for a couple weeks, and it's like, oh, this is all Petrino. Then it's like I'm buying some Conner Weigman stock. So I don't know.
Yeah, and they were 13th in points per game in the SEC last year. So it's like, it wouldn't surprise me if Bobby Petrino quit like mid-October either.
Yeah.
Like, it's like who really knows? But yeah, Conner Weigman, if things go right, I think they could go really right for A&M.
Yeah, he's a good buy low candidate, I would say, folks. If you had to just don't throw your money at Jimbo Fisher's offense at this point, but like if you're having to bet, do some like dark horse Heisman stuff. Conner Weigman is not a bad one to just like throw $25 on, just to be like, hey, all things go. Like Lamar Jackson was there with Bobby Petrino. He's had guys like that. My number, so that was your 8. My 8 was Will Rogers. Number 9 for me. We have the exact same number 9. This is, I think, the only one that actually is the exact same, right? To this point, that we got the same.
I think you're right.
Spencer Rattler coming in at number 9.
Spencer Rattler, not even the best Spencer quarterback in the SEC. But rough. Yeah, I feel like this, like with so much uncertainty, like you would almost think you just pencil him in for like 3 or 4, with what everyone that left the SEC last year of Stetson and Hooker and Bryce Young and Will Levis, even, who knows how high Will Levis really was on that list. Anthony Richardson too. It's like you'd think just by default Spencer Rattler would be up there, but I think a lot of it, and there's a lot of naysaying of what they were going to be last year as well. But, with the schedule of South Carolina and just the playmakers that have transferred, I don't know. It's just, what's the real Spencer Rattler? Is it what we saw for the first 10 weeks of the season, or is it what we saw versus Tennessee and versus Clemson? Those were probably two of the 3 or 4 best teams he played. Tennessee, maybe not one of the best defenses he played, but still 2 of the better teams, and he absolutely balled. So, you can see some good in Spencer Rattler, but I feel like South Carolina's just got a lot working against him for him to be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC.
Losing Bell is not great. Losing Marshawn Lloyd in the portal is not great. I think I think you and I were texting. I think I sent you. They have the toughest schedule in college football next year. South Carolina does. I just look, like you alluded to, is it what we saw at the end, the real Spencer Rattler? Like he averaged 9.8 yards per attempt in November, 4 games, 72% completion rate, 1,200 yards, 9.8 yards per attempt, 13 TDs, 2 picks. He was electric. There's no doubt about it. Spencer Rattler was incredible in November. It's not all that matters. In October, all of October, he threw 1 touchdown pass, completed 62% of his passes, 7 yards an attempt, 1 TD, 2 picks. In August and September, 65% completion percentage, 7.8 yards per attempt, 6 TDs, 9 picks. That's still 3/4 of the season. That was really bad. That it was like, oh, this is not great. We'll see it. Like the small sample size of him being electric and looking like a number 1 pick in the draft versus what we saw the majority of the season. And he's getting a new OC. Like Dow Logans, we'll see what he looks like, but I don't know. He has to learn a new system. It's going to be different. Like, I don't know. A lot of new faces, a lot of moving parts. Like if they get off to a slow start, it's just, I don't know. I don't think you're beating Clemson again in back-to-back years. I don't think you're beating Tennessee again this year. You're definitely not beating Georgia. Like, you just go down the list. I think they're going to have a tough time. Like, I think they're going to be fighting for bowl eligibility, and I think they're going to struggle. I think South Carolina is going to have a really rough year, and we'll see. But I can't put Spencer Rattler anywhere near the top half of this group. I think there are a lot better options.
I would say 9 is near the top half of the group, right?
9's bottom.
He's like just barely missing it though, right?
There's only 14, man. We're near 10th. Like, he's almost in the double digits here.
That's fair.
Right, Matt Green. Going. Number 10 for me was Conner Weigman. Number 10 for you was Joe Milton. Number 11 for you was Jalen Milroe. Number 11 for me has not been said. He's your dead last guy. Dead last. Good, clean, old-fashioned hate for Matt Green on this guy. Robbie Ashford.
Not quite, but I see where you're going with it.
Yeah. Not quite, but, just some good
close.
hate. Rivalry. I'm just doing the rivalry thing, man.
I'm saying Georgia Tech was the clean old-fashioned
I know it
hate.
is, but I'm saying
I wasn't sure if you knew. I wasn't sure if you were mistaken.
It's the South's oldest rivalry and clean old-fashioned hate. I'm just saying. It didn't really work. I was just saying clean old-fashioned hate because that one applied more to what I was saying. And
I apologize, sir. You're the professional here. I apologize.
Look, I'm doing my best out here. Robbie Ashford had a really rough year. He comes in from Oregon. I mean, that Brian Harsin offense, that Georgia game, he's fumbling all over the place, running around with his head cut off. It was rough. It kind of reminded me of what Jordan Yates talked about with Georgia Tech when he was facing the Dogs defense. That's what I kind of thought what Ashford was going through in that game, where it's just what's he supposed to do, man? This is just sad. That offense was broken. Didn't have the guys around him. It was just not working. You have him at 14. Explain it, because I have a very hard time believing Hugh Freeze, who has gotten a bunch out of everybody at the quarterback spot to this point in his career. Another guy who I think deserves the benefit of the doubt when it comes to quarterbacks and offenses. I just have a hard time believing he's going to be the worst quarterback in the SEC this year. He's 10 for me. He is 14 for you. Or 11 for me. Explain your Ashford being dead last.
I think that's fair. It's I'm not super I'm not married to this opinion. The 12, 13, and 14 to me is kind of all there together. I'm not too impressed with any of those. Ashford at least is a dynamic athlete, and I feel like you kind of have a certain floor when you're as athletic as he is. Obviously, as a quarterback, you still need to be accurate and complete passes and everything. But I think the Hugh Freeze angle of it, I would probably, if you had to twist my arm, I'd probably put him up at 13, and you could probably talk me into 12. I'll say that. So I'm not sold necessarily that he's the worst quarterback in the SEC, the worst starting quarterback.
Okay, I'm okay with it. He's another sneaky buy low. I think Auburn's gonna have a bounce back year. I think Auburn's gonna be fun. I think Hugh Freeze has got a good staff. I think they're gonna be sneaky pesky. I don't think they're going to win 8 or 9 games. I think they'll probably be 6 or 7 win team, but I think they're going to be fun, and I think the offense is going to look a lot better. But we'll see.
I mean, if you look at him, threw 7 touchdowns, 7 picks last year. He played in almost every game, but I don't know which games he was actually starting and which were games they were kind of going back and forth. But a good bit of production, and 7 touchdowns, 7 picks is about the epitome of just mediocre, right? Same amount of touchdowns as picks. So he's got a lot of ground to make up for sure. He definitely wasn't good in 2022, but with how athletic he is, he's one of those I wouldn't be surprised. We saw, literally with an Auburn, castaway in Malik. Why am
Willis.
I blanking? Malik Willis. What Hugh Freeze could do with him. So and turn him into a second round pick, third round. Third round. Yeah, so at a Liberty. So that's with Hugh Freeze, he probably deserves benefit of the doubt that he won't be the worst starting quarterback in the SEC.
That's fair. Number 12 for me was AJ Swan. He was number 13 on your list. So like you said, these are all just kind of jumbled. I will say, I like what I saw from Swan a little bit. He had some bright spots. 4-star kid out of Woodstock, I think, back in the home state. That offense is just not going to be good. The problem with AJ Swan in this group, it's just Mike Wright transfers. I think he ended up in Starkville. So it's completely his job. I think this offense is going to suck. They were one of the worst. Matt Green, if you look at their, I'm going to pull it back up. Passing offense in 2022. Vanderbilt was 112th. 6.5 yards per attempt. 112th. This offense is not good. I just don't think the system's good. I don't think they have the players. I think they're going to get their brains beat in again next year. I think the SEC East is better. I think Vanderbilt's looking at 1-11, maybe 2-10 best case scenario. So I can't put AJ Swan anywhere near top. He's not that. You just got to be special to kind of get this thing humming. at Vandy, and I just don't think AJ Swan's that. And I like him as an individual prospect. I just don't see the path to Vanderbilt having a good offense this year, unfortunately for Swan.
For sure, and I probably should have ranked him last. Like I had him at 13, like I said. Like you look at the Kentucky and Florida games last year, like he didn't even start those games. So like those were their big wins down the stretch against like the best opponents. I guess their only 2 wins in SEC play last year. So, he threw 10 touchdowns, 2 picks. Like he was efficient when he played. 4 of those touchdowns were against Northern Illinois. So, take that for what it's worth. But I don't think Vanderbilt's going to be very good. But it's like, what else is new? They did win 5 games, so it was like a breakthrough year. But it's like when one of your 5 is someone like Florida and even someone like Kentucky, you're kind of like you can't bank on that happening again the following season. So it'll be hard to replicate even 5 wins. Probably not sniffing a bowl game.
No, I don't think so. Not even close. I think they take a step back, unfortunately, in year 3 for Clark Lee. Last one, and I think it was only right that we ended it with this. Graham Mertz is my number 14. He's your number 12. Matt Green, I think what's happening at Florida is just bad. Like they lost their DC. They bring in the wonder kid from Alabama who just got hired away from Southern Miss, Armstrong, and we'll see like guys going to the NFL. Like multiple dudes, their DC leaves. Like it's just weird. Like obviously the Jaden Rashada stuff happens this offseason. They don't get Devin Leary. They don't get Spencer Sanders. No Sam Hartman. They end up with Graham Mertz. I have nothing against Graham Mertz. I have something against Florida ending up with Graham Mertz and Jack Miller as their 2 quarterback options going into a big time year 2 season for Billy Napier. This is going to be rough. Matt Green. I think this is going to be a nightmare. I think they're going to be worse than they were a year ago. Florida fans are not. He's not going to get fired in 2 years, but Billy Napier allowing the quarterback room to end up being in year 2, Graham Mertz and Jack Miller is just wild. Like this is a wild scenario to go into.
Is this Billy Napier's fault though? I mean,
yes.
Anthony Richardson has no business going pro after 2022.
Well, no, he does. He's going top 10.
But he shouldn't, right? So it's like he inherited this guy who's kind of a project, and he's like working on the project. And mid-project, this guy's going pro because what he could potentially be that he still has yet to be. So it's like I don't know if I can blame Billy Napier who in year 2 for not having like the quarterback situation figured out, because it feels like he's kind of blindsided by a guy going pro who probably shouldn't have gone pro, despite wherever he's drafted in the NFL.
Matt Green, true or false? Wisconsin had a worse passing offense than Vanderbilt last year.
Is that true?
That is true.
Oh
114 in the country.
Wow.
Graham Mertz has been bad. Like, he was a 4-star coming out. He was like the highest rated quarterback Wisconsin's got out of high school in a really long time. He's just not good at all. Like, his quarterback rating last year was 52.5. Like, he's not good at all. I don't think the Hendon stuff is like, is he the next Hendon Hooker? The craziest one I saw was Andy Jean, wide receiver Andy Jean said, Graham Mertz could be the next Joey Burrow. He said, quote, I feel like he's going to come in how Joe Burrow transferred from another school. I feel like he's another Joe Burrow because he actually knows the game. He's more detailed mentally, a part of the game. I feel like he's going to have an awesome year for sure. Y'all going to see, though.
Bold.
I don't see it. Matt Green.
No, I definitely don't see it. Go ahead.
Their schedule. You look at this. They're at Utah to open the year, right? Tennessee at home, at Kentucky, at South Carolina, cocktail party against Georgia. They get Arkansas at home. They got to go to LSU, go to Missouri, who I think will still be okay, and then end the year against a team that might be in the college ball playoff next year, and an absolute great team that just beat them the previous year at home in the rivalry game in Florida State. I'm not certain a bowl game is just a definite for the Gators next year. I think this is a pretty brutal schedule. That's a lot of just not unwinnable road games, but they're going to be dogs in a lot of these games this year. I think if you're a Florida fan, you should be extremely nervous about what 2023 is shaping up to look like. I think it's going to be a mess for the Gators.
Yeah, I think there's probably 8 or 9 like toss-up games when you start going through the schedule. If not a couple that are just kind of – there's no automatic losses on someone like Florida's schedule. Obviously, with what Georgia is these days and, seeing LSU, what they should be next year, and even Tennessee. Like, it's hard to count those as automatic losses, but I can kind of see why someone would. So, yeah, I'm with you there. It's going to be 7-5 kind of seemed like best case scenario for this team. So we'll see. And we kind of talked about that a year ago, like as challenging as their schedule was, like so many of those big games seem to be at home, like the Utah game and the Kentucky game. Like they got a lot of those big games early at home, and still turned into a 6-7 season. So we'll see. They do have Florida State at home. Do get Arkansas at home, and Tennessee at home, but it's a brutal schedule for sure. Opening on the road at Utah, like they're almost and they did win that game last year, but they're almost the complete opposite of what Florida is in terms of just like being a known commodity and just being consistent and what they are. Like I think that place. An SEC team going to Utah, like when was the last time that happened? Like that place is going to be absolutely just insane.
Yeah, I don't know, man. We'll see what happens here, but I have my doubts on how this ultimately unfolds for the Gators.
And what you saw with Billy Napier, and it's not like guys have to go play to their personnel, So sometimes we kind of pigeonhole coaches of, oh, this guy is this his type of player or things like that, but. We saw him at Louisiana. Like, typically there was a running quarterback when in his systems in Louisiana, and we saw Anthony Richardson last year put up decent running stats, but like what we feel like he probably could have done better. Graham Mertz is not that, so just seeing what kind of fit he is at Florida, I don't know. It doesn't make much sense that you needed to go to the portal, and you were like, Wisconsin, I'm going to see – I like what they're doing in their passing game. Let's bring that guy down here to Florida. So, who knows? The coach was fired. Obviously, Wisconsin wasn't necessarily in the best situation last year. So there is something to that. But, yeah, I'm not buying Graham Mertz stock going into 2023.
Yeah, I'm not either. Well, Matt Green, that was a fun exercise. I think we were fair. We weren't homers, right? I think we were fair.
No, not too much disagreements. And I guess looking at this list, because I'm sure whatever the top 14 was a year ago, I'm sure not all of those guys finished as the starter at the end of the season. Is Joe Milton, is that the answer of the guy who's most likely to not be the starter by season's end on this list?
I would say it's either Milton. I would say...
I guess Alabama's guy, because we don't even agree on who that is right now.
Yeah, but I think if they pick whoever, they're not going to flip. Bama doesn't really do that unless it's a SEC title game or something, or a national championship game. No, I would say it's either Joe, Ashford, or... because I think they're stuck with Swan, Cook, and Mertz. I think it's either Ashford, Joe, or Will Rogers.
Will Rogers. Now that's bold right there.
Yeah, I think he could be bad in this system, and they have to make a change.
Even Spencer Sanders, he still has to win that job.
True, but I think it's another one where it's like if he wins the job, I don't think Kiffin's going to move off that. I think it's just going to be his job and play the whole year. So I think some guys are just like once they pick their guy, they're going to ride with him barring injury.
Also, since you mentioned it, happy 2nd and 26 to all that celebrate. I saw that going on Alabama fans' timeline today, and it's amazing how that once stung real bad seeing that Devontae Smith game-winning touchdown. But I think Georgia fans are finally at peace after their 2 national titles.
You think so?
Yeah, 226. Second and 26 to everyone who celebrates. But I think Georgia tried to do it in some different way. I don't even think I saw it this year though, because that A.D. Mitchell touchdown was like 2nd and 18 or something like that against Alabama a year ago. But 2nd and 26, we'll let them have that. We got the back-to-back natties these days, so it's thick in my skin as a Georgia fan.
There you go. Well, Matt Green, we're gonna hold the SEC on CBS for next Sunday because I want to do that whole one. I think it'll be fun to go week by week and go through this. I don't want to parse through it, make this a 2.5 hour podcast.
They're not announcing this next week or anything, are they?
No.
Okay.
No,
because I think they are announcing it. It could be March. It might not be long from now that they are going to actually. Because I think that those first because they'll go through and announce like the first, like 3 weeks of the year, like a few months out. And then they'll give like those handful of games like ahead of time, like the cocktail party and the Iron Bowl and some of those games that they know are going to be 3:30. But I think we still got some time. Yeah, and even if they do announce it, we can still guess all the other ones that they don't.
Yeah.
So I think we have a good idea of some of those that they're going to schedule right off the bat.
Yeah, I think hopefully they won't do it in the next week.
I have a lot of notes prepared, but it is what it is. I'll save these for next week.
It's okay. I just don't want to, dude. We're at an hour 20. I want these folks to have something to chew on for next week. So we'll do it next week.
It's a nice tease.
Yeah, it's a good tease for next week. We have just all kinds of great college football content we get to go through this offseason. So college football, year-round sport, all that good stuff. Follow him on Twitter at Matt_David_Green. Follow myself at Chase_Thomas. And as always, if you enjoy this very program, leave us a 5-star rating interview on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or however you are listening, and watch us on YouTube. All that beautiful screen, all that good stuff, all the orange, all that gaudy orange, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. New episodes every day. Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you next week.
Yes, sir.